if this coronavirus becomes anything like it has the potential to become, you're going to have such a huge amount of people who are going to be screaming about what it costs them to go to the hospital that they haven't been yet, and the procedures they have to determine how to make them better.
I think we should close our borders of Nantucket.
I know.
It won't be long. It won't be long.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call our Finance Committee meeting of March 2nd to order. This is being recorded. Yeah, hi, Chow. I did the same thing, Joe. I was making sure we had 5, and then off we go. With that, I'm just reminding everyone that we are live on TV, and it's being recorded. May I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I will open the floor to public comment and close the floor to public comment. Thank you. Okay.
A little quick.
Okay. All right.
No.
So, whilst we have potential adoption for minutes, I have not read the minutes that were sent out recently by Ali, so we'll have to do that next time.
Yep.
I got only through some of them. Now, Mary, I'm going to have you. Hi, Joanna. Mary, you're up first, please. So, Mary's here to discuss Article 62.
Article 62.
Hi. Well, let's see where we are.
If you can introduce yourself again.
Oh, hi.
Please.
I'm Mary Bergman, the sponsor of Article 62. I'm trying to see if I can find this correspondence from Matt, but I might just need to send it to you later.
This one that you. Is that what you're looking
is that
for?
the FinCom's, or is that
The letter to FinCom.
NP and EDC?
No,
motion?
this is from the Historic District Commission
Oh.
that we got from. It's the one.
Is it the one that
It's
they
almost
said they
word
were
for
gonna
word.
come up
Yeah.
with?
It's almost word for word what was said at the meeting
Yeah,
on the
okay.
18th. Okay. I emailed it to everybody.
I think it would be, yeah, it might be of interest to get the comment from NP and EDC.
Okay.
If you can, just to look at it, if you do decide to. So essentially, what we've come to is that I think we've really made some interesting strides, because the HDC, as you saw in that meeting, has kind of admitted that they are at a point where they don't really necessarily know how to acknowledge or determine if a building is historically significant or not without help. They need that help from the Historical Commission. So therefore, it wouldn't make sense for this article as it currently stands to rest with the HDC. Although they do have the power at this point in time to deny any demolition application that comes their way. So I talked to Sarah Alger about the possibility of amending this article. It was not within the scope. There was some discussion of should this come back at special town meeting. I think we'll see how that works. But I'm in talking to the HDC. They're going to form a work group or within the HDC and involving me and the Historical Commission, the other planning body, to help codify some more regulations around demolition. So I think that we've reached a good resolution.
Yeah, I watched
so far.
I watched the meeting of the 18th.
Yeah.
And I thought what I thought was interesting and helpful was I think it's Holly, because
Yes.
I haven't met her in person, was mentioning that the Massachusetts Historic Commission had recommended not to adopt because the HDC already has significant authority over this.
Right.
And that Nantucket has the best of all worlds, and the difference between Nantucket and all the other places who've had to put this in is because they don't have what we have here.
Right.
And then there was a discussion later then about the work group, and then going forward and making
Yeah.
sure kind of everybody is holding hands and walking forward together, is my simplistic way of summarizing what I heard.
What I would politely request of the FinCom is, I think in your motion, if there's a way that you could call attention to the fact that the Historic District Commission already has the authority to deny a request, that I don't see them, this would be a good opportunity to educate the public and to remind the HDC of that power that they have, that they, in my opinion, should be enforcing more.
Okay. Questions for Mary? Further discussion?
What is this other historic commission that I hear about all of a sudden?
Sure. So the Historical Commission was reenacted in July of last year. It's something that was around probably, 10 years prior? And it is a longer term planning organization. If you think of the HDC is, they're really an architectural review board. They're a reactionary body that looks at an application and they say what they like and what they don't like. And the Nantucket Historical Commission is supposed to be a body that advises the select board in keeping preservation at the forefront planning concerns. So things like the sidewalks, the things that the DPW does, things what we do with mass highway monies, that federal reviews of what, let's say, if you use any federal money to do a project, say the wind farms off of Nantucket Sound, they have to do a Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act review to see how will it impact our National Historic Landmark status, since our whole island is a landmark. And the Historical Commission should be involved in discussions like that.
They're appointed by the select board?
They're appointed by the select board, right? So that was a group that had it was dormant for about, I don't know, 6 years or so.
I think in the meeting, what I appreciated about that, the phrasing, the Historic Commission is really for a long-term, big picture view, and the HDC is short-term, incident by incident. Because I was struggling with who does what and why, yeah?
So in a lot of other communities, you would have a historical commission that would be, and you'd have local historic district commission. So you might have the Surfside Historic District Commission, the Downtown Historic District Commission, and then you'd have this larger planning arm. But we're unique in that the entire island is one local historic district that's ruled by the ruled.
Ruled, right?
It's ruled. I'll be here tomorrow night for 4 hours. So yeah, they're ruled by the HDC. Overseen. Yeah. This meeting is being recorded.
Not that part.
So it is interesting because we have these different layers of protection, but the board has to feel, the Historic District Commission has to feel empowered enough to be able to make those decisions.
But that's kind of where the Historical Commission reports to the Select Board.
The Historical Commission reports to the Select Board,
They're
right?
not like separate.
Right, they're not
Yeah.
elected like HGC is.
Right. So the thing is, and it's just the other interesting thing that came up in the context of all this is that the HDC was established with a special act, whereas I think 3 of the HDCs in the state were established with special acts, and all the others were established with a regular mass general law. So our definitions of certain things are different than the regular mass general law definitions are, and that adds some. Yeah.
It has
a lot more to
leeway on what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was something that Andrew Vorse was interested in, was trying to amend the special act to codify a couple of other things, but he didn't want to amend it for just one thing. But I think that this discussion, and I hope it continues this way, that it has brought the HDC to the table, and they seem willing to make changes that I'm not sure they were last year.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I think it's good.
Other questions for Mary? Just in case I realize it's, I sent out the letter late this morning, so it says, it's from the HDC to the Town of Nantucket Finance Committee, as it's at its February 18th, 2020 meeting, the Nantucket Historic District Commission voted unanimously in favor of pursuing the intent, underlining of Article 62, preservation of historically significant buildings, to include the sponsor, Mary, as a source, and the newly enacted Nantucket Historical Commission in that effort. So, pursuing the intent is basically the message of their note to us, which you probably all did read, but I felt compelled to read to you. So. Okay, any further, no questions? This is being serious about my. Do we have a motion?
I'm not sure which, so I'm a little confused, given, are we taking away, it sounds like the HDC is now kind of supportive of, at least, understands that they have the power to exercise to delay or disallow demolitions, that you, Mary, are happy with this outcome, so I'm not quite sure what we want to do with the article.
I think it would be a motion to take no action, and then a comment that it is in agreement with the sponsor, and then some verbiage around the HTC having the power to enforce this.
I'd agree with that.
So is that kind of achieving?
Before we do, go ahead, Joanna.
So, but in the second thing today, it said that the sponsor was gonna pull the article and resubmit it for the special town meeting. So
No,
now
I
that's-
said, when I watched it,
Okay.
that's what it seemed
'Cause I
like they
watched
got
that
to,
too.
but then I wanted to make sure
Okay.
that Mary said that, because frankly, I wasn't 100% sure that that's the outcome they got to.
And I think that remains. I think that there's still, I think there's a, as far as bringing this back to the special town meeting, I'm not sure that that's going to be necessary, because I think it depends on what rules the HDC is able to, within their purview right now, set out regarding
Okay.
demolitions. You know, one of the things that we've discussed is having a separate application for demolitions, which doesn't currently exist now, having the onus on the owner to actually hire somebody to do historical research. We talked about the fact that the HDC has in the past tried to hire an independent engineer, and that no one on Nantucket wants to go up against another engineer. So we've never actually had the town bring somebody in and say, oh, well, actually, we don't really think this is so bad that you have to take it down to the studs. So the idea of, well, is there somebody we can, 500 people come over a day on that boat, it could be 501 if it had to be. So I'm hopeful that we can come to a solution that puts preservation at the forefront, that doesn't necessarily have to be codified in some kind of in a law.
Okay.
But I'm not entirely sure what's
You
going to
have to
happen
go back.
between
Yeah.
now and then. And
So that gets
you know.
back to, so do we motion not to adopt, because this, you don't feel this is necessary? Because you take no action,
Yeah.
in theory, it could be passed at town meeting, and then is that really the outcome that we all
I
want?
don't think we want the the HDC has said that they essentially do, although they have the power to determine if something is historically significant right now. I wouldn't want to pass this the way that it is, I think, because I think it would be, they've already said, ooh, we don't really want this right now.
And we should vote against it.
Yeah.
You can pull it.
I am likely going to pull it, but I would like to pull it on the town meeting floor and use it as an opportunity to educate people about where we've gotten to this point, instead of saying, oh, what happened to that? And
Okay. Just, Ken, you're here, you know stuff. Would you mind? I'm so glad all these are being recorded, right?
You do,
Would you mind just giving us your thoughts about what Mary's, the way forward? Because I think the way forward makes a lot of sense.
We talked about it earlier on, and I think that approach is really probably the best, because of the fact that what you want to do is make it as simple as possible. And so rather than have a set of different criteria that people have to take a look at, having it focused with respect to the HDC, which everybody's used to and everybody goes to, is the best way to be able to achieve what Mary and Preservation Trust is in fact trying to achieve with this proposed.
Thank you.
So then should we vote against it with a comment on why?
Is that where we're landing?
I mean,
I really wish I could.
It accomplishes what we want to accomplish if we put a strong comment afterwards that, in some sense, we're hoping for evolution in the HDC and appropriate response, maybe by the special town meeting.
Or,
Can I?
go ahead, Mary.
Can I read to you what Matt Fee suggested that NP and EDC say?
Okay.
Historic preservation blah, 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 is a planning concern. Our continued economic viability and popularity relies on our authentic, preserved, built environment. However, we recommend that this article not be adopted. This change proposed in this article would require a home rule petition to implement and are at variance with current HDC practices. The HDC already has authority to approve or deny demolitions as they determine to be appropriate. And I think that's particularly interesting because it does give that, punch of you have the power to do this.
Yep. Can you forward that to me?
Yeah.
Please. And so I think we're landing on motion not to adopt. That seems, I can't make it, but that's where, and then with a comment that's similar to one we just heard. Would that make sense? Because it can't be adopted in its current form, so it's either two.
And it can't be amended, so.
And it
yeah.
can't be amended
And if
outside the
you
scope
pull
of.
it anyway, then it's not gonna matter.
motion not to adopt.
Yeah,
Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, Ken, you're up. He still knows stuff.
Are you adding a comment?
Yes, we'll add a comment. Similar to,
Or maybe just support.
it's the HGCs, yeah, we will support HGC, that was the end, that's the net, yeah, that was the. Yeah, I'm gonna just take the wording from that, wording from this, say we support both of those.
What, are we starting with 55?
We are starting
sure
with 90, no, oh yeah, which, 55, yes, thanks, Brian, you're right, as you always are,
No, but thank you for that vote of confidence.
always Brian,
Setting you up.
I know, that's. Thank you, Ken, for being here.
You're more than welcome. I didn't,
It's
55.
55.
I have it up
zoning-
there for you too. if
It's
you
up on
want.
the wall, and I'm sitting in.
Your detailed email.
okay, and the question with respect to this is what?
Well, we didn't understand at the time, so planning had come back and said they were still debating it the last time we were to review it. And I think there was some concerns about, the VR to VN of those locations. So did you look at this or no?
I did not look
Okay,
at that.
all right.
I know Brian told me about it, and I took a look at it, and it didn't seem, I thought I had the wrong number with respect to it. He gave me the right number, but the fact is that I didn't understand that the question I was supposed to be looking at.
This seemed like it was supposed to be a straightforward one.
This way at Andrew come in first.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
I didn't know we had it.
Well, only
No.
because it's, again, a real estate sort of topic. It's ground, it's land.
Well, those properties were right there where Don Allen is, so that's
Correct.
why we wanted to,
Yeah.
so there is sort of, but
What
Chatham
zoning
is
do you
not,
want to do?
No, Chatham is all residential.
yeah,
You know,
so that's, I think that's what popped up, but maybe some other things did. So it was just a little confusing about, what does that change for that neighborhood?
That was the discussion, yes. Thank you, Jill.
Well, I think the thing was is that he was, because on the other side of the street, it is commercial, and so perhaps it was
On Chatham,
on, yeah,
yeah, it was Don Allen,
yeah.
So-
But I don't know the answer to the question.
but I mean, you mean the difference between the two zones?
No, I understand the difference between the two zones, but in terms of whether or not it makes sense or not,
Right.
if Andrew has felt putting that forward,
Yeah.
I would feel comfortable with respect to the recommendation he made, because of the thought process that he goes into with his entire
Yeah.
group.
From the planning board, correct?
Okay.
Planning board said take no action.
What is the difference in the VR district and the N district?
The amount of activity, ground cover that you can have.
So you have more, higher ground cover percentages under V and as opposed to VR.
That's correct, yeah.
Subsequent to, excuse me, subsequent to 18 Pulpus Road, what's the zoning after that? Going out to Pulpus Road? Do you know offhand?
I don't know offhand. But it gets, it becomes less restrictive in terms of larger parcels that you have to have as you're going out. It goes into the R10, I think, after Don Allen, and then it goes into like one.
Yeah.
I don't have any trouble going along with the planning.
Do we already vote this? That's our motion. in
No,
here?
that's a proposed motion.
A little ahead of us.
Yeah, that's a proposed motion from Libby to help us kind of get through it, and then she was,
She's hurting us.
No, I know we do
she's
this
helping us get
sometimes.
done.
Hey, can I ask you a
She's
question
helping
about
us
that?
get done.
On
Take a sense
Chatham,
of the community as
if
we
you went
talk
down
to try to
Chatham,
determine
could he have a driveway on Chatham?
We're prepared to
Yeah, because you're gonna, depending on the amount of ground cover you have, because Chatham is
Is
a
his
public
address.
road, so you could have a driveway on that. But
Right,
you're not gonna be able to have two driveways.
right. I mean, I
With
don't,
only one parcel, you can't have two driveways, so
is he the one that wanted it?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Like,
You'd assume so if he's putting in the article.
well, no, I was
Citizens
talking,
article. I'm sorry.
well, I don't know who Robert is. That's, Robert Van Camp.
Yeah, but I mean, the planning board has voted to take no action.
Okay.
So, so Mr. Van Camp doesn't have to stand up at town meeting. and
Convince
explain
people
why-
to do it,
convince
yeah.
people why
Right.
he wants to.
Yeah,
do it.
I'm asking, I actually renovated the house at 12 Chatham, not too long ago, so I've spent a lot of time on that road, and, if you can access that commercially, that would make me a little, it's a little dirt road, that road couldn't handle it.
No, it's true. But that's why they recommended against making the change
Yeah.
to the greater density, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I haven't used GIS before. You don't want me trying to.
Stephen always pulls up maps.
So we're gonna-
Yeah, right, Stephen did that.
Motion to support the planning board on 55.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, thank you. Okay, Ken, now over to 62, we just voted on. Let me do that, motion not to adopt.
Are you at 99 now?
Yeah.
Sure? Okay.
No, we have to, yeah, we'll go 99 and then we have to come back to 68.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay. Let's go to 99 though first, and that way we can set Ken free. 99.
Okay, 99 is the proposal to acquire the property for the school on 24 Surfside Road in exchange for 2 parcels at Surfside that were authorized to be sold in many years ago. And so what we've had them appraised, the 2 parcels on Surfside appraised at together at 1.8. The proposed property at 24 appraises at between 1.850 and 1.9, and there is an additional cash consideration of 370 because of the fact that the property wasn't on the market, and we needed to pay a bonus for them to acquire the property. The property is critical for the creation of the school campus. The funding for the 370 comes out of the real estate sales account that is available. And once the property is acquired, we will then swap with the school the parcel over by 4 corners where the parking lot is outside the pool for that to become town property. And so that we will have the ability to do what we need to do in that corner with respect to the development of the Sparks Avenue, Surfside Avenue interchange. What happens there is that we close off the entrance to the parking lot from across from Vesper, and we enter the parking lot from Sparks Avenue. There will be an ingress and egress in the same spot because the school does not want to have a pass-through along the side of the pool coming out. So what you're doing is we're going to be able to create additional parking spaces there for the use of the school, and we're going to address a real concern with respect to traffic on Surfside Road, and working with the engineers. It's going to be probably further down Sparks Avenue than it was originally thought, so that we don't have a problem with Williams Lane coming across there. Over and all, it all hangs together, and the school has agreed to the transfer. We're going through the engineering work right now, and the property will stay in the control of the town until the school is ready to transfer it. The owners will be able to live in the house for a period not to exceed 3 years while they're building their home out in Surfside. Both brother and sister are building their homes out there, and they're paying rent, a fair market value rent. The other thing that I negotiated with them is that if the property in Surfside is sold within a 7-year time frame, then they have to pay back the cash consideration that we have agreed to pay them. So that The average is the 370. Yeah, the 370. I wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be a flip and we're going to be accused of facilitating something like that.
So let me ask you a question about the property. You say it's worth 1.8 million. wouldn't it be diminished by the fact that it's on the school, essentially on the school property? Who'd want to buy that as their house?
Well, the thing is that it has a 3-lot subdivision.
Even there, I mean, could you subdivide it and build the houses there on the school, essentially on the school property?
Absolutely, because there's.
So they could have, there's a
You're-
commercial
you're-
value to
Peter,
it.
you're selling stuff in an area that has historically Nantucket homes, First Way, for $1.1 million. It is, in my lifetime, I never thought I'd see those numbers.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. There is no property that is conveniently located, that has reasonable land, that has access to schools, has access to public transportation and everything, so.
I hear you.
I was gonna say, what's ultimately the plan for this property?
The plan for this property is gonna be integrated into the school campus. I don't know, there's not a definitive plan with respect to it, but there's a building, a home, and a garage that are there. And part of the agreement is that we're gonna be able to access the property and do whatever development plans the town wants or the school wants to do with respect to it while they're living there, yeah.
And
Is
the
it-
7-year thing, like, that's enough time?
Well, the thing is, I figured that was a reasonable amount of time. You know, like if they're gonna be flipping it, they're gonna be doing it for a period of time.
The swap of the town and the school is not contemplated in the article.
It is not.
Will that have to come to town meeting at a later date, or is that something you can do without?
No, I don't think it has to come to town meeting. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know that it has to.
You
come
might
to town
not
meeting.
wanna bring that all up at town
No,
meeting.
no, no,
if this
I'm
gets
just
solved.
I'm giving you.
We'll be talking about that damn tree
No, no,
until midnight.
I'm giving you all of the background in terms of why we did this deal. This is why this only has this very simple part.
I got it, but if this ends up being a conversation about the Rotary, you may not
No,
get your
no.
house.
No, it's not gonna be that kind of a conversation, so. This is a standalone article, a standalone
Yeah,
purchase, and there's nothing in the document with respect to the Kaisers that refers to relationship with respect to the school.
Thank you.
Other questions?
But there is gonna be, won't there be a slice of that will go to planning for Rotary? Is that
I don't think so, I don't think they need it.
at Bartlett?
This is the other, no.
Oh, you're talking the other end. Sorry.
This is.
Because I know you said Sparks.
This is it's a corner of Sparks and Surfside, so,
Oh, gotcha. I thought this was one behind them.
No.
Behind the school.
no,
Gotcha.
no, yeah.
Any other questions for Ken?
Well, I guess just on the assessment, for the lots, because I don't remember, kind of been gone, so I haven't looked at this lately. So forgive me. Were they 2 1-acre lots, or they were undersized lots?
They
They're
are
later.
they're just about 1 acre. One is a little bit smaller than the other, and they are contiguous to each other. They side by each. One faces Lee, the other faces.
Have you had any comments from the public about it? Because I know they appeared before the select board, and yeah, it was fine.
No.
Have a
Motion to adopt?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Good.
What's
You
next?
can. 100, real estate conveyance, industrial land and acquisition, 57 Surfside Road.
Okay, this is the Reese property, and this came up with respect to David Gray and the need to upgrade the sewer facility. When you're going out Surfside Road, it's on the left-hand side next to Manny Dias's property, and that is no longer able to handle the volume and everything like that. So they've come up, Weston and Sampson have come up with a plan to be able to keep that there, and to then create it on the other side of the street on one of the lots in, Reese has a 10-lot subdivision there. We were able to carve out a corner piece of the property. This is where the existing one is over here, and this is the Reese property. This is Surfside Road, and this is Windy Way. And we were able to carve out this parcel, which is about a little over 11,000 square feet, and have deeded access across a parcel that Reese owns on Windy Way to be able to provide access to be able to service this, all right? And so part of this is that this would be where the new sewage support facility would be accessed off of here, and you wouldn't have to create an access across the bike path or come in off of Surfside Road. So it was very important to keep this sort of part of the streetscape the same. What we did was we're trading this parcel for two 15,000 square foot lots out on Industry Road, and then a smaller parcel that is not buildable just right next to at the southern part of Reese's property. Reese owns a major portion of the property out there, and in the Reese property, these two are at the bottom. I think I have a map here with respect to.
Is it down towards the shooting range?
Pardon?
Is it down towards the shooting range, that end of it?
It's at the end. When you go down Industry Road, you take a left on Shad Bush, and it goes down towards the shooting range. Right. And it's those two. Sorry. Anyway, so those two parcels there was a concern on the part of the select board with respect to the fact of whether or not there were other parcels in there for contractor use. There are 8 separate parcels in there that are next to the Harbor Fuel property that could be 15,000 square foot. And I've been talking to Andrew, and I got together, and we found a way that on the corner closest to the road that comes in to be able to potentially create 2 more 15,000 square foot parcels that could be used for contractors. I'm taking that to the select board to get them to make the decision as to whether or not we were going to go forward with that at this point in time. So there would be, so we were losing these 2, but we found a way to be able to create 2 additional contractor-sized lots. The issue with this one is the appraisal on the lots come out about a little bit over 1.2 million for the lots out on Industry Road. The valuation on this property is just a little bit over 1.1 million, or just under 1.1 million. So there's a gap of about a little bit over 150,000. That's a premium that we're paying to Reese in order to be able to do this. Again, we came to him with respect to it. The property wasn't on the market, and so as a bit of the negotiation, we've narrowed the gap down to this. So I think David is really this is very, very important from the sewer point of view in terms of being able to have this available. And what I was really happy is that we're able to do this so that it isn't an eyesore as we're going out and not doing some damage to the neighborhood out there. And so this is where the house is on the corner, and this was the lot where the UPS store was.
Okay.
There are a
So-
lot of apartments there at the end of the street.
Correct, yeah. And so there's, the fact is this is a wide enough strip to be able to make sure that we have a permanent forever easement access onto this property.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Ken. 101 and 102, I guess you can do the 2 together.
Okay, and 101 and 102 is,
114 Orange Street.
oh, yes. I need to be careful when I say this. Okay. We've had discussions with Ara Charter who owns this property. And the object of this exercise is that this property, once acquired, will end up going to the land bank to be part of the property that we're putting together with respect to Consu Springs and that whole area, in terms of making sure that we have an appropriate place for storm sewer runoff and drainage. I'm in the process of having this property appraised. The property is assessed at $58,000 because it is unbuildable. And the appraiser suggests to me that in fact, the appraisal might not even be up until that number because of the fact that it is totally unbuildable.
This is the corner where the ducks are.
It's where the bike path comes out.
Yep.
Onto Orange Street.
Okay.
Right. So it's the property right to the left.
across.
We already took part of this property from her when the bike path was done, but we're in discussions with her because of the fact that she has not yet come to collect the check for the acquisition of her property. Because the fact is that there is a mortgage on the property, and under the law, we have to make the check payable out to both the mortgage holder as well as her. She has difficulty understanding this concept because she wants the check made out to her, and she wants it made out in little pieces so that she can use it to make her mortgage payments, as opposed to doing what it's supposed to be done with respect to it, because the mortgagor has to agree to what happens with his fund because of the mortgage. I will once again, I've had a most recent meeting with her, with Mike Burns and with another person. I'm gonna get together with her again because she is bothering people out at Plus and at the finance department, looking for, wanting to get the check. I'm trying to once again explain to her that we have this documentation that the law says you have to sign, and this is the procedure. So
What, is she satisfying half of her mortgage by selling it? I mean, why?
no.
She'd have to pay off the mortgage, right, if the land was sold or taken or whatever?
Well, the fact is that she's going to have to, well, if she has to deal with her mortgagor, because we have a right to take the land on the basis of eminent domain. So Eric and the land bank is also negotiating with her to try and avoid this whole process of having to go to town meeting. But the fact is that she has a very unrealistic idea of the value of her property, and she said that she's had. She said that she said that she's had people making her an offer for $150,000 and
For an unbuildable lot.
Yeah, and I just told her to bring in the offer because we'd be happy to show it to the appraiser to be able to use it to determine a fair market value for her property. And so, needless to say, she has not surfaced with respect to that. So one way or the other, either we will buy it and we will get reimbursed from the land bank with respect to the fair market value, or the land bank will buy it and we won't have to put any cash up. But the amount of money is not material based on the indications of my discussions with the appraiser in terms of where the value is.
Sorry to ask you to repeat yourself, but can you say again why we need this?
This is in connection with the stormwater runoff in the whole council area. It's very, very important to be able to have this as part of the area for the drainage and whatnot, so.
Because we're gonna go in there and do things to it to enhance the drainage?
No, it's gonna be part of the area where the water's gonna be able to drain. So this is.
But it'll take improvements to do that, or just by virtue of its kind of salt marshy?
Well, at this point in time, Rob hasn't talked to me about anything that is needing to be done, but from our point of view, because of the fact that the land bank is gonna be taking it over, I haven't looked into that issue, because if there were any improvements that needed to be done, would be the responsibility of the land bank to do that as opposed to the town, Chris.
And the land bank would want it because of?
With the land bank is working together with the town in terms of trying to address all of this area out here, because of the fact that it abuts some of their properties there. And so this really works to protect the properties that they own in the area along the shore.
Okay.
And is this unbuildable because it's wetlands?
Yes.
Any further questions on this one? May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Is that for both 101 and 102?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And 64 North Liberty Street.
Okay, this is a similar situation. This is an unbuildable parcel. The appraisal has come in with respect to a range of $30,000 to $60,000. I have been in contact with the owners. They are three of the heirs of the owner of the property, and I have made an offer to them with respect to purchase the property for $35,000. Considering it, and we'll get back to this. Again, this is part of the Lily Pond property, so it's really important to be able to have this as part of the drainage with respect to all the work, again, that the land bank is going to be doing with respect to Lily Pond, and also really important for the town because, in fact, the problems with respect to the water over on Westchester and the road that comes down, and Cliff Road that comes down in there, that keeps getting fed by the water that comes in off of the Lily Pond into that area. And so this will help address that in terms of stopping a source of the water that is coming to create those problems for the town. So
So who's gonna be investing in the work on this particular
land
parcel?
bank,
The land bank?
yeah.
So the deal you have with them is to acquire the land and then they'll pay for the,
Yeah, they're gonna pay for everything with respect to what, from the Lily Pond, working with respect to the
and
Lily Pond.
when you make these deals with them, do you have like a memo of understanding, like, is that how that goes? Because
Well,
you're not making an offer that's contingent on anything,
No,
right?
no, and the discussions with the land bank have, with respect to, for instance, on Orange Street, we've been talking to them, and because the warrant article said that it would go to the land bank. With respect to this, this was drafted before I got involved, but the idea is that it would go to the land bank and would be used by them in terms of fixing up the Lily Pond, since the Lily Pond is their property.
But who creates the paper trail? That's really what I'm asking.
Well,
do?
I will probably end up doing it with Vicky Marsh and the land bank, so.
We sure we have the right address?
64 North Liberty, yeah. It's a small piece of land.
Yeah, I'm just trying to connect it to the Lily Pond, because
Yeah.
isn't it up, on the way up north of Westchester?
It's up.
Up by Gingy Lane.
Yeah, it's,
Right, over there. I'm just trying to connect those, and it's at a much higher elevation, right?
I used to run that way, so not so much that I remember.
Probably Sunset Hill for a reason.
If it was a hill, I'd be miserable. No, the hill is over here. I never ran up there because it was a hill. But along Liberty Street, because I lived on Liberty, so I'd run Liberty to North Liberty, and then I'd cut across Darrymore and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So there's not much of a hill. Little bit.
I'm just trying to understand how that interacts with the Lily Pond.
It's where the drainage, it's where the grade runs over there. Yeah, and actually it all goes
In that direction.
in that direction.
It all-
Yeah. And there's various deposits of clay here and there.
Roots water.
I have some kind of flawed topographical map in my head, I guess.
Run first, and I can prove to you it's
Right now.
Yeah.
From out there, don't we?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. If I'm not there, don't wait. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, Ken, you're up, the last one.
Okay, the last one is on the corner of Bartlett Road and Raceway Drive. This one is for public safety. And part of what I've talked to Andrew about is that I'm having the appraiser take a look at the appraisal of the parcel that you need to acquire to cut the corner, but also taking a look at acquiring the entire lot, because the entire lot is assessed at just over $500,000. And the thought process was there is that if the entire lot could be acquired, it might be able to be used for affordable housing, in addition to addressing the issue. In addition to addressing the issue with respect to the public safety of getting around the corner. The engineers have drawn the map with respect to what needs to be done in that whole area. And I just met with the appraiser today to be able to come back to us with a number for just acquiring these and a number for acquiring the entire lot.
How big is the lot?
It's a half an acre, just under 0.49 acres, 0.49, half an acre.
And the acquiring at least a piece of it is essential for making that turn not quite so adventurous.
That's correct, yeah.
But if you live there, they'll go right into your apartment.
The address is one Raceway? Is that the?
No, it's one hatch circle is the correct address.
Okay.
And how do we pay for this?
Real estate tax, is that what you just said?
Well,
no,
this one-
all this is doing is, allowing us to acquire.
This is, oh, sorry, I haven't looked into the issue of
It's-
where the funds would come to acquire this once we decided to go forward, if we decide to go forward with it.
We're just authorizing them to do it.
Yeah.
This is just a permissive article to allow them to do it. I have not been asked to identify
No,
any
yeah.
particular funding allocations available for, if we went down the road.
Right.
Okay.
And the other ones I cleared with Brian with respect to where the funding was coming from. So.
Is this a friendly acquisition with the seller?
Well, the answer to this is that I don't know, because I haven't been able to reach the sellers or the potential sellers. I wrote to them, I didn't get a response. I have called the numbers that I've been able to find through the white pages. They leave a voicemail message saying that there are two friends that own the property. The voicemail is of the wife of one of them saying that she's there and taking a message. I left 3 messages on their voicemail asking them to call, identifying myself as a real estate specialist for the town, saying wanted to talk to them about possibly acquiring their property, and I haven't gotten any answer. So I'm going to go once more with a certified letter. But what I found is that when I take a look to try and find the name and match the address that we have on our records, they don't seem to match together. So maybe when we do a certified letter, we'll get a certified letter back. But,
Have they been paying their taxes?
yes. Yep.
Interesting. Okay. Any further questions for Ken? Do I have a motion?
Can I ask a question now in
Sure.
the discussion?
Further discussion?
Where does the notion that we need this for traffic safety originate? Is that-
It came from Mike Burns
Okay.
and his committee. And
They're looking at various spots around the island, and they say this one's a bad corner.
Yeah,
Is there accident data or something that backs that up?
I do not know the answer to that. I know this was the recommendation of Mike Burns, and it was supported by Rob McNeil. In terms, that's the data that I have in my file. It was able to pull it out in my file as I was looking for this
And
problem.
then it lands on your lap as the real estate specialist after it comes to Burns's committee to say, Ken, can you go investigate whether we can get this piece of property?
Yeah,
He has to
correct.
maintain or something like
And there is, sorry, you said there's a notion that we would take a portion of it,
Well,
either just take the portion that's necessary
Right, yeah.
around the corner.
The fact is that the plan that we have shows what needs to be taken to just go around the corner. So, but it's a fair chunk because of the configuration of that lot and the corner, right? So I said to the appraiser, I want you to take a look at what it would cost to acquire the entire lot, because it maybe make more sense from us to in fact pay, if there's not a great difference, pay the extra, whatever it is, to get the entire parcel, be able to do something with it, as opposed to just the parcel at around.
Because the appraiser would take into account if the amount that we would take would make it substantially like unbuildable, or not just sort of based on we took this much square footage,
No.
but what it does given the zoning in terms of what's left
What's
available.
left, yeah, that's right. So,
Thank you.
so that's why I wanted to have two separate, and appraisal two separate ways. in terms of What's the value? The point that you're just making, Chris, that if we've taken this, what's the value of what's left, okay, in terms of the value that we might get sued for, saying, well, what I really should be paid is the value for the whole thing, because in fact, I can't do anything with what you've left me with.
Okay. Sorry, I should have done that before,
But you said it was a year-round person living there?
No,
It's not.
there's nothing there, it's vacant land.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and people have,
Well, that's what you said, they can go to the phone number.
no, what I'm
Where
trying.
do they live?
My job is to try and get in touch with the people and let them know that we're doing this, all right?
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating when I couldn't find a phone number anywhere, so I ended up having to, go in and buy rights to these various sites that gives you access to phone numbers and all of this stuff. Yeah, to be able to find out how to get in touch with them. And then you do get in touch with them, and then they don't come back, or they don't respond to you, so.
Start picking those little orange flags where you want to put your road up.
Yeah, right, all of a sudden, somebody over there.
Their neighbors will let them know.
Pictures on the year-round community. Like, anybody?
All right, sorry.
No, that's,
I'm fine.
so we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Ken.
Ken. Yeah.
Your input is really helpful, because for the many years sitting here, right, we didn't know the answer to these questions. And so having somebody come and give the background of even what's happening, explain the paper trail, and explain the purpose is really.
It's been very interesting, because there's been no precedent for me. And I'm going to look in terms of what it is that I should be doing for you. And so you just try to figure out what makes sense. Why are we doing this?
Right.
Because part of what Libby wanted me to do was, she said, well, now you have to write something for the voter guide in terms of explaining this. So once you start with that, then you figure out, you have to go back and figure out what's all behind of it, so that in fact you can make a reasonable recommendation or explanation in terms of why the town is doing this.
And the beauty of it, now that you've defined it, anyone else who would ever do it would have to follow your way, Ken's way.
Right.
So that's the beauty of not having a precedent. You get to do it the way you think
Way you
works
want.
best.
You are the president.
You are the precedent. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, Brian, over to you. Number 2,
Okay.
please. The new ones are on the wall.
Yeah, it's on the wall.
Okay.
There was a small change, as we finished our 900th review. The only change is the bottom line number for the general fund should have been 24,488.47. I think it was 27 in the one that we sent out on Friday or Thursday. So there's $24,488.47 of prior year bills in the general fund that we were proposed paying from free cash. There's $28,433.84 in the sewer enterprise fund that we're proposing be appropriated from retained earnings.
Can you scroll down,
Yep.
please, Brian? Thank you.
Yep.
I see the reading from the bottom.
I'm actually reading from the top of the motion, but that's fine, sorry. And then there's $8,563.57 from our OAH that we would propose paying from free cash as well.
Okay. Any questions for Brian on this?
Motion to adopt. Abstain because you go to the hospital $44.
Okay. And you have to actually, please step away, you have to actually step away from the table. I get
For this one?
feed, yes, please.
Okay.
I know. Just, let's make sure.
Don't try to influence.
Can't picture under the table that way.
Okay. All right, so Joe made a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Bear with me for 1 second because I'm going to pull the next one up for you. From my thumb drive, Article 3 is prior year appropriations. This is a
Welcome back, Chris.
This is a reappropriation. See if I can manage to do this correctly somehow. I don't know what I did, but. Okay, so we would propose moving from IT. There was an article at the 2017 annual town meeting, as noted here, Article 10. We had allocated $300,000 for GIS digital imaging. It came in, we only needed $151,000, so there's $149,000 unexpended in that article. We're proposing moving $61,909. It was actually funded from free cash in that year, and 3 cents to the IT professional service line budget for some of the upgrades and enhancements to various software that we need to do, as well as Team Dynamics licenses. For OIH, there's there's a fairly substantial number of articles. What we're proposing to do is that they had been allocated individually to various components of upgrades or to the building. So what we're proposing doing is there's one general article called OIH Building Improvements. We're proposing moving all of these balances left in that into that article to make it easier to do any improvements or renovations that we need to. When they're singularly allocated, if the money comes in over budget, then we can't really, if the proposal comes in over the amount allowable that we have in the article, we can't do anything, we can't move forward without going and getting another funding source. So in order to accomplish what we need to in the event we're continue down the road of making renovations currently, it'd be much easier to have that flexibility by putting it into the building improvements account, which was established in 2018.
The total here is about $530,000.
That's correct. The airport is proposing moving 3 articles into the fuel farm rehab. That is a very large and extensive project, and these are monies that are not needed in the articles that they were originally allocated to, and they'd like to reallocate them to this project that is an important project to the airport in terms of rehabbing their fuel farm so they can continue selling fuel. The last one is a DPW request. We are repairing the, it says we'd like to move money from first wave path improvements of $213,000 into an article from 2015 annual town meeting called 16 Broad Street repairs. That money being moved in would be used to supplement the funding in that to, we have to remove the underground storage tanks and put an above ground storage tank. And this money will help fund the contract that we need to enter into to get that done.
So we should assume that Article 10 of 2015 was approved.
It was, yes. Yeah.
Any further questions for Brian on these?
Just one quick, on
Transfers?
our own home,
Yep.
I mean, we don't know what's going on with it, but I mean, do we have any sort of amount of money that we have to, that we limit ourselves on spending? Like, is it good money going after bad?
Well, one of them, as you can see there, we actually haven't even started to undertake, is the replace the flooring of $250,000. I think that what we really are looking at is as we move through what's going to happen, there are going to be renovations that need to be done to the building as we move through that secondary process. And this will give us the flexibility to make those repairs and renovations as necessary until we get to a point. Is there a point? There probably is a point at some point where we say we need to only do the most critical repairs in renovations to the building once we identify what's actually happening at the next step. So yes, there is probably a point where we say we can wait it out, but this is really kind of just giving us the flexibility to make sure that the projects we think we need to get done, we'd be able to fund without having to stop or put them on hold to come back for funding.
Obviously, the air conditioning.
The scale of this year versus other years, there's about $1 million here. Seems like a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I think that part of it was, I think we had discussed doing this with OAH last year, but we didn't actually end up doing it, and this year it was on the carry forward, make sure you do. I think partially because we don't know what's happening with the building still, and we're at that point, so if there's renovations, again, this is why we're trying to do this, to make sure we have the flexibility to do it. So I think this was discussed and intended to consider for last year, and just we pushed it out.
Yeah, I didn't even just mean Island Home. I meant the whole thing. That is
yeah, I mean, generally no, I think in the last couple of years it hasn't been that much, but I think the airport's got a substantial amount for a project that is really large. So I think that some of this is just dependent on what projects they have and what projects have been completed and what has been unexpended in projects.
Yeah, I guess it's the unexpended part that sort of is a little surprising to me. You know, we sit here and we talk so much about these things. We, you know, clearly at some point we gave a recommendation on spending the money, and then 3 years later, it's like, no, it never happened.
I can tell you that, I will tell you that, like, first wave did happen, the one for the DPW, that did happen, and this was money that, because that was a collaboration with sewer, and between sewer and the town and the DPW, that was money that wasn't needed from the DPW because of that collaboration. So at that time, I don't think we knew how it was all gonna play out, so there's that money, and it was free I believe that was from free cash, so it can be reallocated versus closing it out and going through a project. And since we do have a rather large project at town meeting, or excuse me, at 16 Broad for the storage tanks, it makes more sense to reappropriate it to be able to complete the project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Brian? Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Is the next one 6?
6, please, Brian.
Go back and see where it came
Get to this, sorry. Okay, so 6 is general fund budget transfers.
Yes, next to that.
So the first two, gas and town vehicle salary and mosquito control salary, were picked up as when we were doing the recap sheet. There actually is no salary for gas and town vehicles, and there's no salary for mosquito control. They should have been operating expenses, not salary expenses.
Yep.
So we're transferring them to the correct category of budgetary lines. The medical school department, they asked for $65,000 for some additional salaries that they needed to fund this in the current year. So we had done an analysis and thought that we could accommodate that request. Town administration salaries, were proposing moving $125,000 because currently we have not only the new assistant town manager, Rachel, in the budget, but we also have Chuck Larson is still doing work for us. So we're moving the entirety of Rachel's salary into the budget there. And then the town administration operating for salaries is relative to what we had budgeted in the operating side for. Originally, the real estate specialist was supposed to be a contract, and we made a decision to go in a completely different route, which I think is actually working out very well for us. And that was the amount that was budgeted in the operating budget for that contractual services, and we're asking to be able to move that into the salary line because of the change in the way that we decided to do this.
And the reason that there's availability in the medical insurance is because it came in lower than you expected to pay?
Yes, and it could also be, there's a lot of factors that play into it. One of the largest driving factors is the rate on an actuarial basis that we set ended up being slightly lower than we had anticipated. But there's also always changes throughout the year. It could be people leaving, and people that are hired don't need the same plan that happens, or people made a change in terms of going from, say, master medical to the PPO, or we haven't hired positions as fast as we thought, as quickly as we thought, and we plan those based, we do an analysis of open positions and we forecast those. So there's a lot of different things that go into what that is, but a lot of it is just the rate change, the rate not needing as high of a rate increase as we had projected.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Brian, when you do something like that, that's Ken's position, right? When you move from a contractor to an employee, I assume it's actually more expensive to the town to be an employee than to pay a contractor.
It could potentially be, depending on what else is needed, but yes.
Any other questions for Brian?
I wrote down, we voted on this.
You could, I don't think
No,
6 you did,
no, we didn't
because
vote on 6.
we were finalizing it right up until Thursday.
5 then?
5, yeah, we did for 5, yeah.
So I voted.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Motion to adopt.
Second.
any further discussion on the motion? See, I remembered finally. No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. What I like about this group in particular is that if there was more discussion, you just leap in.
That's true.
So if I forget it all these times,
Oh, or we'll talk about it later after we already voted for it. Why not?
maybe not.
Okay, so Article 8 has gone through more vetting and review than I can, which has been really helpful. And I don't know why it came through you, but
I was
probably a
going
good
to
thing.
ask why every number was yellow.
It's going to be removed just to make, I think we highlighted it just to make sure that we caught every number we had to. So we're proposing $92,637,516 for an operating budget, which is approximately 3.7% increase year over year. And the way that we're meeting those appropriations, taxes into the general revenues, and as the community may be aware, the presentation that we've given, we're proposing, there's $842,000 one-time expenses in the general fund side. There's $160,000 in one-time expenses that we agreed to fund. So it's that's gotta change to $1,002,000. That should be $1,002,000 be transferred from free cash in the treasury, for the one-time expenses. And that will get you the 92,637,000 once we move the 200 out of there. 516. So I'd ask that you approve it based on it being only $1,002,000 of free cash, not $1,202,000.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Any further comments on the motion? All, motion to adopt with the change in wording. Peter, may I ask you to amend your motion to say, motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt with change in wording.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
No spectators at this part.
They're all at home watching on TV.
What a crowd we draw.
We have a big TV audience, I'm sure of it. Okay, I have
All of
10.
George's jokes. You know.
But did you not do 10? I'm sorry. I couldn't remember. I gotta pull that up. on here.
Well, I have that we didn't do 10.
I don't have it
Okay.
either.
I didn't separately do that because I think it was in the warrant here, so let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah, if you would, please.
Okay. So Article 10 is capital for both the town, or for the town and school and everything. I think it was in the warrant that was sent out on, for February 21st, if I'm correct, Madam Chair?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so too.
So I'll go to the bottom. The bottom is proposed raising $8,592,512. And to meet the appropriation, we're proposing using $5,953,800 in free cash. Reappropriating $346,000, which from Article 10 of the 2015 annual town meeting. And for those that don't remember the 2015 annual town meeting, there was an allocation of $400,000 to begin a feasibility study and work relative to the town offices being located at 2 fairgrounds. But since we are in somewhat of a holding pattern, we thought it appropriate to reappropriate that to a town-wide facilities master plan. So, which was part of the discussion with Capcom and was included in their report. We're proposing $100,000 be transferred from ambulance reserve fund, which will fund paramedic upgrades for the ambulances that we currently have. $1,162,712 be raised and appropriated from the fiscal 21 tax levy, which would be subject to a capital exclusion. So all of those, if this article goes through, they're contingent on the ballot passing at the annual town election. And then that $1,030,000 be authorized to be borrowed by the treasurer pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7, subparagraph 1, and that is for the sidewalk improvement plan, which is consistent with the way we've been funding a borrowing authorization for that plan. So all totaled $8,592,512. And I'll be happy to answer any questions on the projects if anybody has them.
It's just the 1.2 million that's subject to.
Yes, the 1,162,000 is subject to
And
the
that's
override.
scheduled against specific projects?
Yes, yep, and in the actual detail, they're all called out what they are as well.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have it here.
That's okay. So the police, the second pump out boat is part of that. Let me just go through and try and find one. The SCBA's, which is year 3 of 4, is part of that. The school's replacement Bobcat is subject to that. That's a regular borrowing. The DPW replacement of 2 Ford Rangers is included in the capital outlay exclusion. The replacement sweeper is included. The replacement the F350.
But it would be voted as a package,
It's
obviously,
voted,
right?
yes, it'll be, well, there's 2 warrant articles. One is for all the equipment,
Mhm.
and then there's a second capital question about the the CCTV work as part of the phase of stormwater. Those were we separated them in 2 articles, one being for the stormwater, and the second being for all of the capital that, like the trucks and things that were in there. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I always feel like you look at me.
I do look at you, Joe, but you leap into motion to adopt. So,
Motion to adopt.
Second.
thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? No. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
So now we're to 15, right, Madam Chair?
Yep, yes,
Okay.
please, Brian.
Article 15, which I did put up behind you, is there was a change from what we sent to you. The original debt service that the sewer should have been in the sewer. So the total for the enterprise funds is $46,270,421. As you'll note in the version that was sent to you on Thursday, as well as this, the language in the motion includes the requirement that the $5 million for our island home that is listed down in the body of the article coming from general tax revenues is contingent upon passage of a Proposition 2.5 override. So here under the funding sources, we have the $5 million listed out, and the language in the motion makes that contingent on the ballot question being successful as well.
Do you anticipate this article getting called?
I typically always anticipate every article you call this. I do, probably to have that discussion, but I would imagine it may, because that's,
About the article.
yeah.
If we have a negative motion, it will definitely get called.
If we were to have a negative motion, it would definitely get called. Yes, correct, Chris.
I'm not the only one joking.
Probably get called on our way home.
True.
Motion to adopt?
Thank you, Peter.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around our home, what that means, what the language being in here.
Sure.
And maybe I'll figure it out. But I mean, it's,
No, that's fine. Well, I can tell you what it means,
Yeah.
it's fine. So essentially, if the ballot question for the $5 million override were to pass, we would have a gap in the budget, which would require a special town meeting to go back and fund. Now,
if it were not to pass.
if it doesn't pass,
Yeah.
if it passes,
He did say pass.
He just, okay,
Correct.
yeah.
I'm sorry, okay,
Yeah.
my apologies. If the ballot didn't
Rightfully
pass, then
confused.
yes, we would have a problem. If town meeting passes it, and the voters generously or graciously pass, vote yes on the ballot,
Fine as is.
it would be fine as is. But it's a 2-step process when you want to override Proposition 2.5, much like a debt exclusion. So this requires the ballot question that asks, can we raise an additional $5 million for real and personal property outside of that? And then if the answer is yes, then it would be a permanent raise to the levy limit on an annual basis. If it doesn't pass, either this doesn't pass, the budget doesn't, this article doesn't pass, or the ballot doesn't pass. First of all, if this article did pass, we'd have a much bigger problem, because then we'd have to have a special town meeting for every enterprise fund. If the ballot didn't pass, but this article did, then we would have to have a special town meeting, because we'd have a $5 million hole in the island home budget. Now, we have, as part of the
Within the
levy,
limit, it's there, so we
we've
wouldn't
already
actually
we've already allocated some. Then what we would have to do is then also go back for that piece, and the additional piece would have to come from retainer to get to that $5 million, and some other minor changes to get to that actual.
That's getting to what I'm trying to get at here. The special meeting, we'd be asked to draw authorization, essentially use money that we have between retained earnings and within the
Yes,
levy limit.
yes.
Created additional
Right.
Call the article and then amend it to strike $5 million from OIH.
Good question.
Well, so, I mean, if they wanted to do that, then we'd have to have the funding source there, or we'd have to deal with it later, I suppose, but we wouldn't be able
No,
to.
but if you, why would you have a fund? If you basically said, okay, you go through the motions and someone says, well, I want to amend this because I'm opposed to the $5 million override for our Island Home. Because otherwise, I mean, you're holding up the town. I mean, to get all the other $41 million of projects, you have to vote, at least at town meeting floor. You have to vote for the whole enchilada.
I suppose somebody could offer an amendment to change it.
The override, the Island Home override, this is the only place it's mentioned. That's not a line item.
That's the only place it's mentioned is this and on the ballot.
So then you kind of got to expect that somebody's gonna bring this up.
I think people will support it, but I don't know.
I think people will support it.
I think ultimately the people will support it, but the thing's being advertised as a referendum on the Island.
I know,
Home,
but
which
there's
means
another
there's
check and
somebody
balance on the-
side that's gonna wanna talk about it.
I know, but there's another check and balance on Tuesday at the ballot, or the 18th or whatever. I mean, so I think it's got another check on it. So I
But the-
kind
the
of,
5
I like how
million
this works for that reason.
5 million is in perpetuity, so this year we pay for it because we have the money. At some point, you're gonna have to raise taxes to pay for it.
I happen to know
Right.
someone's gonna do that.
Oh,
He's
you
gonna
do?
do what?
They're gonna, I know I was
Oh.
spoken to by someone who is planning on amending, they're not striking it to zero, but they plan on amending the $5 million number in the override.
On town meeting
On
floor.
town meeting floor.
Okay.
May or may not pass.
Just an FYI.
Exactly.
So what if they change that and the vote is for 5 million and the vote gets approved, and it gets approved?
That's all. They normally do it, they don't follow through. But an individual did tell me.
We spent a lot of time on it last year. What would happen if we didn't pass the capital budget, right?
Yes.
Somebody did say that.
Reacting to,
What do we do?
Being tied together, you mean?
Well,
Is
they're
that what
tied
you
together,
don't?
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that the 41 million, I'm personally kind of squirrely about the 5 million myself, but we've got a situation where the other 41 million is held hostage to approving 5, to pass this article.
Was there ever a logical? If I remember correctly from all the discussions, they did not want this to be a referendum on Our Island Home. So therefore, to just have a single article about the Our Island Home override made it a referendum on Our Island Home. And that was some of the logic, if I remember correctly. And
I mean, the
Please
logic,
correct me if I
the
didn't.
logic for me about not doing a separate article is that it's an enterprise fund that we have to fund, and it's part of the enterprise fund operations, and we don't individually fund any of them. So it didn't make sense to me, quite frankly, to specifically break it out when it's not really a lot different. It is different than we're asking for $5 million override, but it's still an enterprise fund, and it didn't make sense to break it out, and it made sense to.
This is also gonna be something that somebody in the audience could ask for a comment from the finance committee on.
yes,
In terms of why we feel this is the appropriate way to go about this.
It is interesting, because given all the time the select board spent talking about this issue, whether or not to do an override for Island Home or not, I thought that we would be making a motion on that individually, because that's been such a singular point of conversation as opposed to $46 million for all the
Right.
enterprise funds. I think it's gonna be confusing
I think it's.
as crazy on Island Home, because I think a lot of people are showing up to talk about this issue.
we did talk about it.
Yes.
So we have spoken about it. This is not the first time we're talking about this.
Yes, we did. We talked about it during the budget. meeting.
Individually, around that 5 million,
Yes.
Around the 500?
not the
Yes.
5 million being bundled into a
No.
46 million.
Oh, not being
No.
bundled, but yes.
Yeah.
But we did talk about the override extensively.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Yes,
that's
within
my only
FinCom.
point, is that specific item has gotten so much discussion, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
with us, the select board, in the community, in the newspaper. I didn't expect to see it come,
I mean,
Bundled.
yeah.
yes, I think when of all the discussions that I've sat through and watched, and to call it out, it probably will get called out. And it also would set a precedence, though, if you pulled it out, then next year, what do we pull out? Then we're looking at, and this is just following the way it's been done effectively before. So I'm comfortable with this, for that reason, and we may find out that that was, my comfort level was incorrect.
Is that, well, we've probably never done an override on enterprise.
Well, I can tell you that I don't know how they were done in the past, but the solid waste has had an override for the town's contribution to them. I think in maybe 2012 or some year, there was an override done for a portion of the town's contribution to that enterprise fund. I don't know what they did back then, Chris, because obviously, like I said, I wasn't here, so I'm not sure. But I mean, there was not a lot of, at least from my perspective, there was not a lot of internal discussion about carving that out individually in this, because like I said, that it's an enterprise fund. The funding source has always been tax dollars. I understand that it's an override, but it's not much. Principally, I understand the discussion about an override, but the way we're proposing funding it with tax dollars is principally not different than we've ever done in any other year. Now, there's a difference because we've added an override to it, but it's still tax dollars that we're funding. So in my mind, it didn't make sense to call it out, quite frankly.
Okay, so can I, again, this is just because it's my first year, but last year when you did the one on the sewer, because he wanted like $2.5 million for a study or something, wasn't it that much money?
The $2.5 million was for the, if I remember correctly, I know I'm talking around, but I think that was relative to the capital for the design and OPM services for the new force main.
Yeah.
Which was done in a capital article. It was done in Article 21 or whatever the capital article was done. So.
Gotcha.
That was, I mean, done through that article. And I think we may have actually, I think we did it in there, or we may have called that out, but that's a capital project, not an operating budget, so they're slightly.
Yeah, but this could, I would just think logically, people might think of this as a capital article. I'm not saying we shouldn't have done it this way at all. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying it that way.
I'm in favor of it one way or another personally. I would vote yes if it were broken out, so I don't have an issue with it. I was actually thinking about Joanna's point. I'm trying to think through how we articulate and can help sort of navigate through the confusion if the confusion's coming that I anticipate is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also to have people understand that this is not a one-time thing,
Right.
right? That's the thing that I think that people could potentially be confused about.
Well, and on the ballot, it shows it as a one-time thing. It doesn't show, it doesn't say in perpetuity. It says, basically, shall the town of Nantucket be allowed to assess an additional $5 million in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of supporting the operation of our island home for the year beginning July 1st. That's all it says.
But once you've done that, it is in perpetuity. That's the
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand.
Right.
But
It's a permanent override of the
It's a
levy
permanent
limit.
it doesn't
override.
say that, though.
I think this is gonna be confusing to people.
Well, and it can, then we stand up,
So when it goes, it doesn't stop.
then we stand up and explain it,
$5 million every year.
you know.
I mean, I'm comfortable with it too. I'm not gonna vote against this. I mean, I just think that this is gonna raise some questions, and I think people don't really understand the difference between operating and capital, first of all, even for this large amount of money, and why it's not a separate article. But it's because it's an operating fund.
It's an
and
operating
it's
fund.
gonna go on.
Yeah, they don't care. They just care
Right.
whether, yeah, it's money.
Brian,
Yeah.
if we, I'm just trying to think, so if we, I think we have to support the article itself. But then the override fails at the ballot. That in effect deletes the $5 million, puts you back in the doghouse, so to speak, with how to fund it.
No, I
I'm
don't.
trying to add a little levity. This is serious. This is.
No, yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so maybe.
So that all
yeah.
goes forward.
Yes.
And then we have to deal with the issue of
The only-
how do we fund our island home?
That's correct. So if the annual town meeting votes in the affirmative for Article 17 or 17, excuse me, or 15, 15, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Then, and the town and the voters at the ballot box reject overriding Proposition 2.5. Every other enterprise fund has the authorization to move, because the only thing that's contingent on that ballot is the $5 million for Ireland Home. At that point, if that were to happen, then we would have to have a special town meeting to appropriate funds to close that gap for the to basically essentially authorize our island home. We would not be able to set a tax rate until that had been done.
Would the special town meeting happen in the fall, or there'd be a
Yes.
special town meeting?
It'd be in the fall.
Okay, just checking to see if.
It's the way that it would be.
There'll be
done.
some, there'll be some
I mean,
people that'll
I
do the
could-
special
we
town
can
meeting. within the
start,
special
see,
meeting.
so here's the thing, we could start the fiscal year, but I
Correct.
wouldn't be able to set a tax rate until that was balanced.
And does that mean you can't issue tax bills?
No. Actually, yes, you're right, it would be, yes.
Yeah, you can.
'Cause you have
But
no
but don't
tax-
forget, the first two, that would be why we couldn't set a tax rate. We can, the first two bills that you issue, the town issues in July and September, whenever that is, they are preliminary bills.
Oh, that's right. It
And
says
they're not, the
preliminary,
actual
but-
tax bill is mailed out on 12/31, which is the reconciliation of the difference between what's been paid and what the ultimate levy limit
Okay, so you
was
have until
raised.
December.
So we do, yes.
Okay.
Well, we actually have until about December 5th or 6th to have that done,
Okay,
yes.
okay. I just want to make sure.
But without getting into all the boring, gory details, if it wasn't done, we would then have to just issue a preliminary bill for the
whole
third
year.
quarter, the
Okay.
third quarter, and we'd have to have it eventually set. But I would prefer not to get into
That would be a mess.
that nightmare, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
What does the committee think about putting a comment on this article and noting to the town meeting attendees, town meeting, the citizens, as well as the voters, that we bring your attention to, the tax override for $5 million, which is we feel is the most appropriate way to fund the Our Island Home at this
Shortfall.
stage. But people should recognize this is a permanent increase in the levy limit, and regardless of whatever happens, I don't know, I'm rambling, but
Sounds like you're volunteering.
I am.
Well
I am-
spotted,
I am
Joanna.
volunteering.
Well spotted. Okay,
But let me take, if it's okay with the committee,
I like
I'll
this
take a
idea.
I
crack
think
at
that
it.
would be
I
great.
just
Is that
think
okay?
it's worth waving a little yellow flag on it. This is unusual, it's a significant amount of money,
It's
and
preemptive.
there are different
Yeah, it's
opinions on
preemptive.
OIH, so.
I'm definitely okay with you taking a shot at it. I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about it till I read it, but yeah.
now, you
Yeah,
do
no, that's
understand.
fine, that's
and-
fine, I'm okay with that.
If
Yeah.
anyone wants to weigh in on Joe's comment, it has to be by noon tomorrow, because we're
Okay.
done. We have to be done.
Oh, so you need this tonight, okay.
Or,
I mean,
I mean,
I'm not planning on saying a lot, but I think people ought to be alerted to the fact that there's an unusual funding
No,
decision.
that's a regular kind of occurrence.
So wait, it gets voted down in the ballot box. Where does the money come from? How are you gonna get that $5 million?
It comes from the
I'm gonna,
special
there,
town
so
meeting.
there's, in our budget, in our levy limit calculations, okay, we have set aside $3.1 million of levy capacity in the event that this were to fail, okay? Then I would have to take all of the retained earnings that have been certified by the state, okay, and I would have to use that, okay?
It's like
For the
And then,
difference.
and if that wasn't enough, then I would have to find more money by, either through additional revenue coming in from Our Island Home because of an increased census, which would be somewhat difficult, changes to the general fund operating budgets to figure out how to increase the 3.1 million to close that, service level changes. There'd be any number of,
So it's not gonna be a good thing. I mean, it's gonna be
No.
tough.
it would not be, no, it would not be good, but, this is the way that we've recommended that we believe is the best way to fix the issue. If it goes down at the ballot box or it didn't pass the town meeting in the article itself, then we'd have to go back and figure out what to do.
Okay.
But I will say that we have, as most of the committee knows, for the last 3+ years during the budget cycle, we have been talking with the select board about the fact that we are going to get to a day that we really do need to consider doing this,
No,
and
exactly.
we're here.
because it's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
I will draft up something short and sweet and get it to you, Denise,
okay, thank you.
as quickly as I can tonight.
And then
Okay.
how will we're not gonna be able to vote on that.
No, here's the issue with this. So on the comments that we've done so far, 1 or 2 or 3 of us somebody started a comment, we tweaked it, we send it to Libby, she tweaks it, and now they're all in the warrant. So everything that's been written up until now is already in the warrant. There's a lot we can do as a committee, but I wasn't really hoping to wordsmith our comments as a committee, to be blunt, because it's just a lot. So,
We don't boards with them, we usually approve them.
No,
They're for-
no. So, but we take what's been said at the meeting, we write the least amount we can write that provides clarity. So if you look at all the comments that are in up till now, because they're all in the warrant already, either Joe's written them because he's our best comment writer, to be honest, or Stephen. Olive has the last course, I'm kind of the worst, not the worst, but not great. And then we'll tweak them to try to make them not too long because people want to comments. And then secondly, then Libby has the final, as the town manager, has the final, here's the best way to say this. And frankly, they don't get changed much from the person who drafted them originally. So.
But you just wanted to say this was in perpetuity, right? Is that the comment you wanted
So
to
this one-
drive
Well,
home?
References on the
I think
ballot.
I think there are 2 points that I was sitting here trying to think. I think I'd like to point out to the voters that that particular $5 million is, even though it's up in the text somewhere, it's subject to the ballot box on whatever it is, March X, and that it is a permanent levy override. It is not a one-time funding decision.
Chris, you came up. I mean, do you have a problem with that, Chris?
I mean, there's no problem with Joe sending it to me sending it to you, Chris. It just, if I sent it out to all of you, you can only reply singly. You can't reply, and then if you're all changing words of each other, realize what I've got in front
You
of me.
can't
just
say it's
Chris-
permanent if it's not permanent in the vote, in the way it's written on the ballot.
That ballot gives me the right, if it were to pass, to raise it every year from the date of the ballot onward. It does not.
And see, that's part of,
How
that's
does it
part of the
do
reason
that?
why I think that has to be said, is because people, somebody might read that and say, oh, it's just
just
a
this year.
one-time $5 million funding decision.
I agree.
No, it's
I
a
get-
permanent funding
It's a
decision.
permanent ability to raise it, it's not a necessity
Right,
to
well,
raise
that,
it.
therein lies the very it would authorize me to raise $5 million above the levy. Okay. More than likely, we're gonna need it because we're not home.
Right.
But it doesn't, it is, once I have that authority, I can raise it now, once the authority's been granted,
If you need it.
if it were to be needed.
I guess,
But if Ira Lindholm just happens not to be here 4 years from now, you retain ability to raise 5 million, increased at 2.5% a year.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, it is clearly a new permanent revenue funding source. I just think people should be aware of it.
and you know, just, we really want people to vote for this article.
Yes.
So I'm not making that's how you want when you go to the ballot box, but we don't want to we don't want to create confusion that gets people saying we can vote this down.
Well,
And that's so if we're going to make a comment. The point of your comment is to warn people that what they're getting into a little bit with this.
I just think,
To be
I think this,
transparent,
you know,
isn't
very
it?
often, this
agree.
is one of the articles that
agree.
normally just gets accepted by
Transparency.
acclamation. I just think people ought to be just,
They should just know, that's all.
I'm cool with the transparency, but I think we want to be as direct also in telling them why we think they should.
I don't think you'll be able to do that
Sorry.
in a comment. I mean, the comment he's talking about, I have seen similar comments over the years at town meetings, ever since 2.5 went in. When somebody said, well, this is a big kick, you know, you gotta tell everybody and tell them why. So there's precedence for his approach.
we draw attention to it, and those that are against it,
That's our job.
Make it fault
That's
anyway,
what it is.
because people, I'm assuming, I
This is
think
not
as you are,
gonna
Chris,
sneak
that
through.
people, there are people on all sides of this issue and it's gonna get discussed.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking that as the finance committee,
yes.
Yeah,
this
of
is,
course.
this is
No,
not
you're-
just
I
the-
agree.
the usual, multi-million-dollar approval.
I agree. I support those comments.
We're being
If we had to vote on it, I'd vote for it. We're good. Let's move on.
I want to be as brief and as nonpartisan on this as possible. All I really want to do is raise people's awareness of
That's a
the
permanent
different
tax.
character of that particular line, because I think the conversation will happen of its own accord.
How do you, just totally hypothetically, because I'm curious, let's say somebody came in and bought our Island home and ran it and you didn't have to worry about it ever again. What do you do with the $5 million so that you keep adding on every?
Nothing.
It was.
unused levy capacity.
Yeah, you might not
Goes
use it.
back, you don't have to.
We wouldn't
use
need
it.
to, I don't,
Affordable
we
housing.
wouldn't need to use
That
it.
you don't have to do, you don't just say, I'll take it and I'll, you know.
I can't, I mean, I can't,
with the
so
2%
here's the
from
thing, I
land.
can't raise more in real and personal property taxes than is voted at an annual town meeting. Okay, so if,
Yeah.
let's just say that town meeting voted this all the way through, and then we were out of the business at whatever point, then it would be available to be appropriated, but I can't just raise it arbitrarily because we have the authority. Town meeting is the one that gives me the authority,
Yeah.
essentially, to raise it through
Yeah.
the annual town meeting process. I can't raise more than I
You still have
need.
to justify it,
Yeah.
is what you're
But
saying.
you don't
I-
always have to use up your levy capacity, right? Say there
It's
was.
up to the
it's
levy
up-
capacity,
Yeah, so
right.
you don't have to use it all, right? So say something.
Yeah,
happens
no,
and
I
you
knew
need
that.
more money
It
on
was just
something
more
else,
about
right?
the, going to the point of saying this is in perpetuity. But he-
On the other side, if we wanted to start a Parks and Rec department and hire 10 people to work there,
We
gee, we have levy capacity to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
there,
not saying we would, but.
Yeah.
but for 6 months, we've sat here and gone like, boy, we'd love to do that, but we don't have the money. So I think we'd find ways to spend it.
Yes.
Okay, but I do wanna make something clear to everyone that's not only here but watching. This recommendation isn't to go be able to spend more money that would be generated from anything else. This is strictly to solve a problem for me,
On
from
our
my
island.
perspective,
On our
okay?
island.
No, I understand that and I respect that and
I just
I-
wanna make
I-
sure that
but-
people
but-
understand that I'm not doing it to create levy capacity. I'm suggesting this and
But it does create levy capacity.
it absolutely will, and I've been very candid and clear that it would, because we have 3.1 million sitting there anticipated, okay? But the goal from this recommendation from me is not to race to daylight to do anything else. This is to fix a problem that I think everyone acknowledges that we have.
Okay, but I think, maybe I'm missing your point in this, because I think there are a lot of people that think we need to do this because they think the island home is placing too much pressure on
Sure.
other needs because of the levy.
Yeah, and we've all been said that there are things that could be done, but the purpose of this is to take the strain off the levy capacity for this particular issue here. Okay, now if farther down the road, people want to present a plan to the voters, that could be done. But it's not the reason that this is necessarily being done. We cannot fund Island Home within the levy limit. It's impossible.
And if I understand correctly, obviously the our island home retained earnings are long gone.
Well,
And so you've been.
they're not long
Well,
gone, but
and then they go away and then they come back and they go.
So,
back.
but my point is, you've had to cover shortfalls before out of free cash for operating
what it is.
expenses, which is absolutely not correct.
agreed.
So we
For
are,
not anything other than one time.
right, you can do a one-time expense from free cash, but you can't do ongoing operating expenses.
On an
So
annual
this is
basis.
also to get us back into, to continue to have strong fiscal policies that we have in practice. So it's also in contribution to that. It's not just, okay, I want to raise the levy limit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you know how Nantucket voted on 2.5 in 1980?
I wasn't here in 1980.
The state voted to adopt 2.5. You know how the town of Nantucket voted? 60-40 against. Overrides aren't a bad thing. 2.5 was never right for Nantucket, and overrides should be considered when prudent and done.
Perfect.
This town never wanted 2.5.
It's a different town now.
Okay.
I feel like this is a much more transparent way of doing it. I know it's also a little bit of an accounting issue for you, but I feel like if you're gonna tax something, at least it's a line item, so.
Transparent about it. Okay, so do I have a motion? on this?
Motion to
Motion to
support.
accept with comment, yeah.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I will have you,
Joe, thanks for doing
I
that.
will have a draft comment.
Thanks,
to
Joe.
Denise Probably by 7 o'clock tonight.
Whoa.
Are you to Article 17, right?
Depends on how many beers
Yes,
I
we need
have.
to do 17.
Forgetting on TV.
17, please, Brian.
Well, the majority of it is all airport stuff. The first is I'd like to put airport retained earnings into the operating budget. They need to also additional salaries and wages for 50,000. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all going to retained earnings to various approved projects, capital. And the way that they operate, just to let you know for the capital perspective for the airport, the way that they operate is every town meeting, they get a borrowing authorization for most, if not all of their projects, unless they already have an identified cost that they can allocate retained earnings from. We typically ban projects for them that they get through, and when the project is done, all the costs are identified. They will transfer retained earnings into that project to pay the ban off so that they won't have any borrowing costs associated with it. It's a way for them to maintain some flexibility and cash flow flexibility, but it also is a way that if they needed to borrow, they would have the ability to do it, but generally they have not needed to. And the majority of these projects here are all to pay off outstanding bans, with the exception of the airport, the apron 3 repair. That's transferring it in for into the project from for some additional money that they needed. But everything else is primarily for to pay down bans. Want to comment is because there was a they're transferring it, asking to transfer from unallocated expenses, which is quote unquote their reserve fund, it's in their operating budget, transferring it to salaries because they had a retirement and we had to pay out contractually obligated policy related vacation and accrued leave time. We proposed transferring free cash of $500,000, which I believe we did discuss. Article 4 of the 2015 annual special town meeting was the $1 million appropriation for the feasibility study and design of a facility. We're proposing transferring $500,000 into there. As the town manager discussed previously, we'd like to continue the review and analysis of operating models, and since that article already holds money, it makes the most sense to transfer into this because it is in line with what that article was established for. We're asking to transfer from free cash $200,000 into the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. That's based on an analysis of where freight costs are to the operator of the system, and so in order to make sure that we don't need a really large transfer at the end of the year, we're asking to do it now. As you may recall, part of the budget presentation to the select board said that we may need to do these, which is why we held back some of the free cash and not fully allocated in the event that this needed to be done. We're also proposing transferring $200,000 into, and should say Ireland Home, not Home, fund operations. Based on some of the changes that have occurred down there, we feel that it's prudent to transfer some money into the operating lines. As you know, we have an interim administrator, which is a contract through an outsourced firm. So we want to ensure that we have enough, and we are utilizing travel nurses as well. So we're proposing transferring those in to ensure that we have enough to manage through the end of the year for those.
Questions for Brian?
Move to accept.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And
26 is the last one,
this is
Brian.
the last one.
For you. And we have
Okay,
one more.
I thought we had done this, but maybe I had brought it up to the committee, and I apologize if I had done this earlier. This is the appropriation into the special purpose stabilization fund that the airport had created for their accrued liability, which is essentially any compensated leave balances that are required to be paid out upon termination. So they would like $100,000 be transferred from certified retained earnings into that fund.
Motion to accept.
All in favor? We have one more, folks, and then we are done.
Is it mine?
No, it's not yours.
Okay.
You can now relax, Brian.
I will put it up on the screen if you would like.
68. Teresa Williams, Complaint Committee.
Oh,
Motion not to adopt.
second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so I want to say thank you very much. We got through all 117. We are done with reviewing the articles. So tomorrow's meeting is canceled. I will be Ally did post the Wednesday Select Board meeting as a Finance Committee meeting, so anyone who wants to attend, myself and Jill is attending. I think, Joe, you said you were
I'll be there,
attending. So it is posted, so if you want to attend in person, where the Select Board then goes through and makes all their motions on the warrant articles. And then I don't believe we need a meeting on the 5th, Brian.
Okay.
What would we need it for?
If you would like one, I will keep it posted. If you don't want one, I don't know what you would need it for unless you wanted to just approve minutes, but,
No, we can approve minutes
mean-
at another meeting where we
That's
have a
fine.
meeting.
I mean, we're gonna have a meeting, or there's a couple of meetings right before town meeting, and
correct.
for that matter, if there's really an emergency, we can meet before town meeting
Okay.
starts, right? So-
Either
That's
that or
fine.
we can, actually on the 12th, when we do our citizen come meet the articles, for the first 5 minutes, we can approve minutes.
wait, we
So
could post a
that's our
meeting.
next meeting.
Yes.
Then the 12th will be our
And
next meeting.
It's 3 hours.
It's,
Depends on how many people.
we
are here.
were, you know, based
we
on
serving
our,
wine?
based on our normal audience that we have here, I'm guessing it's not going to be 3 hours.
So
But
it's-
yes, it's booked for 3 hours,
And what's the time again, sorry?
5:30 to 8:30 in the community room. And there'll be an advertisement posted in the paper this week. Thank you, Libby.
So if we get 6 people, we're just gonna ask them to, what
Well,
articles they have
yes,
questions about?
actually, Brooke Moore has agreed to moderate it for us, which is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're just going to do is say, everyone who's here, which articles do you want to discuss? We will then discuss it. If it's, you know, in terms of how long we'll discuss each article will really depend on, you know, what the topic is, how many people are there, how many want to get discussed. So,
If God forbid we get a crowd, we're just gonna go through them all.
And then,
no, we won't go through them all.
No,
We'll,
still-
no.
I can't be there, Denise, I
On
won't be
the,
there.
okay, thank you.
and then after the 12th, what's our next meeting?
After the,
Are you
oops,
here
hang
the
on.
11th?
It just starts to confuse me as
Okay.
we get down to the.
So
end.
after March 12th,
I'm
our
on the-
next
I can't get back
meeting
in time. I'm on the main line.
is March 16th, which is an extra meeting. So I am assuming, I'm not canceling it yet, but expect it to be canceled,
16th, okay.
okay? The 19th, expect it to be canceled. That's if March 12th had 100 people at, we'd run a second session.
Yeah, it's canceled.
The 25th, expect it to be canceled. April 1st, review of technical amendments, we will have that. Is that correct, Brian?
Well, I would hope that we don't need it, but it's
Yes.
planned
So
in the
don't
event
count-
we need a technical amendment.
Don't count on that. And then right after that meeting is the pre-ATM conference with the moderator, with Sarah, where
Oh, that's the.
that's April 1st.
Okay.
The same day, okay,
Same
so
day.
it's 4 o'clock and we just,
So it goes from we'll go from 1 to 3 on April 1st.
oh, it starts at 1 o'clock.
It starts at 1 o'clock for technical amendments, if there are some. And
then
if not, we will let you know, and we'll just have to be there for 2 o'clock,
Gotcha.
okay?
And where, is that at the high school?
That's, always training room,
It
they're
should be
here.
is it in training room or community room?
It says training
Okay,
room,
yeah.
so, and then obviously the auditorium on the Saturday,
Yes.
okay? So is that
And
good
what
for,
time that Saturday do you think?
starts at 9.
9 o'clock.
But we don't need to be there earlier or anything?
You usually, I think we post a meeting and you call a meeting and then adjourn to the town, and then in case there's anything,
We're doing it
That
the same way, that
Hyper
you and
last
Stephen
mi-
will be up on the.
Yeah.
we'll
I
be-
don't know, it depends on
I think
what
it'd be
Sarah
down
wants
front
to
just
do.
like you were last year, but we usually post a meeting, Madam Chair, right before town meeting unless there's any last minute business that has
Which we
come
have
up
had
that
before.
has to
Yeah.
For
be addressed.
8:30?
We usually post it for right around 8:30, yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Perfect, thank you, Brian.
If the virus gets here, we'll have.
Okay, so with that, that's where we stand. Is that clear for everyone?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was very wrong about our 5 o'clock finish. Very wrong. Well, 48 minutes.
I
wrong.
thought it was gonna be 5 too.
Okay, before we adjourn, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Denise.
Really
Thanks for
appreciate
stepping
all
up.
your hard work. This has been quite an
Thank you for
adventurous
your hard work. You've done more
yes.
than the rest of
And
us,
it
so.
wouldn't have happened without all of you. So thank you very much. Much appreciation. And Brian, to you and Ally, you've kept us really great on track. So thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Pleasure working with all of you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.